paradrama tales.
At family meeting, I said I can't wait for our vacation. My dad laughed loud sharp and said, "It's only for family without you." They all laughed. That was the moment I stopped being their son and started being their bank account. And I'd finally had enough. I should have known something was off. The second my mom invited me over for Sunday dinner. She never called during the week unless something was wrong, and this time her voice was almost too cheerful. "Just family," she said, like it was supposed to mean something warm. But after everything that happened recently, the guilt trips, the cold calls, the accusations over a 2-day mountain getaway with Emily, I had a feeling this just family dinner wasn't going to be about reconciliation. Still, I showed up. Because deep down, I still wanted to believe I mattered to them. The backyard was full. My dad was manning the grill like some suburban king. Matt and his wife were drinking beers like it was game day. Tara was scrolling on her phone like I didn't exist. My mom was setting the table with that tight-lipped smile she uses when she's pretending nothing's wrong. And when I arrived, no one said hi. No good to see you. Just a few glances like I was background noise. I tried to play along, made small talk with Matt's wife, complimented the potato salad, smiled when someone made a weak joke. But it was like every word I said dissolved in the air. Then halfway through the meal, I mentioned something light, something hopeful. I said I couldn't wait for summer vacation, that I was looking forward to a real break this year. And that's when it hit. My dad, loud and rehearsed, let out a sharp laugh. "That's just for the family," he said, "without you." The table erupted in laughter. Matt clapped. Tara snorted and muttered something about me not needing them anymore. And my mom, she just smiled. That kind of smile people wear when they want you to believe it's all a joke, but it's not. I didn't fight. I didn't cry. I didn't even finish my plate. I nodded, stood up, left the wine I brought behind, and walked out. No one stopped me. No one followed. And in that silence, I realized something deeper than pain. I wasn't excluded by accident. This was intentional. They wanted me to feel small, invisible, reminded that I was only ever welcome if I played by their rules. That dinner wasn't a peace offering. It was a warning dressed as a welcome. A quiet setup stage to remind me of my place. And for the first time, I wasn't going to sit quietly and take it. The betrayal didn't start loud. It never does, not with my family. It started with a phone call from my sister Tara 2 days after Emily and I got back from our trip. I hadn't even unpacked my hiking boots when she called me selfish for going off the grid. Then Matt chimed in, texting that I'd changed, like independence was some disease. And my mom, she didn't yell. She dropped quiet guilt like a stone in the middle of a calm lake. "We've always been there for you," she said. "But when you get a little time off, you run like we don't exist." Here's the thing I didn't post about the trip. I wasn't bragging. I wasn't even hiding it. I was just living. But someone found out. Turns out a cousin saw Emily and me in a snowy Instagram story, cheeks red, craft beers in hand. Just two people enjoying a weekend in Boulder. And somehow that became evidence of betrayal. To them, I wasn't a son or a brother. I was a utility, a resource. And taking time for myself without consulting the family calendar or inviting the emotional freeloaders was an act of rebellion. It wasn't just that I went without them. It was that I could, that I didn't ask, that I didn't need their permission or approval. That's when things shifted from guilt to control. I started noticing weird little things. My mom asking oddly specific questions about my work schedule. Tara tagging me in unrelated posts just to check if I'd respond. Matt accidentally sending messages meant for someone else, messages about me. That's when I realized I wasn't being left out. I was being watched, cataloged, measured. It all felt subtle at first, like background noise. But when I got the notification about a failed $5,000 withdrawal from the old joint card I'd forgotten to close, it clicked. This wasn't a family upset over vacation photos. This was a quiet takedown. A manipulation machine revving its engine behind passive-aggressive smiles and guilt-laced dinner invites. And maybe the most painful part. It worked for a minute. I almost apologized. I almost called them. I almost doubted myself. But then I saw the bank message, and I remembered the laughter at dinner. And I realized this wasn't about love. This was about control. And I had just given them their last opportunity to use mine against me. By the time I saw the bank alert, I was packing up for the week until my phone buzzed with a notification. Withdrawal attempt declined $5,000. My heart sank. My mom had tried to pull $5,000 from our joint card. I'd set the daily limit low, $400 for moments like this. But that limit was the only reason the transaction didn't go through. In that instant, the warm, just family facade crumbled into stark reality. This wasn't a request for help. It was a takeover. I froze for a second, staring at the screen as the realization washed over me. They weren't asking anymore. They were taking. And they thought it would be fine. My fingers moved on autopilot. I blocked the card entirely, then renamed the account memo in the banking app to Pay Without Me. It was a declaration of firewall, and the avalanche hit almost immediately. WhatsApp exploded. My mom texted frantic apologies, calling it a misunderstanding. Dad accused me of overreacting. "You know how tight things are," he wrote. Matt lectured me to stop acting like a victim, as if I had invented the rules. Tara sent laughing emojis and a screenshot of the rejected transaction, like it was all a big joke. Their messages blurred together into a chorus of entitlement. For my part, I responded once. "Okay, that was it. No arguments, no drama, I just cut you off." Then I went silent. I didn't block them, no need, I just didn't reply. Their texts piled up unanswered, each one, a reminder that support had become theft, that generosity had been weaponized. And just when I thought I'd reclaimed some control, reality struck again 3 days later. Emily and I returned from work to find our apartment door ajar. Inside, my parents stood in the living room, as if they owned the place, helping themselves to my home, rifling through my photo albums like they'd come in for dinner instead of committing trespass. That break-in wasn't part 5. It was the final confirmation that I was no longer welcome, not as a son, not as a brother, and certainly not as a bank. It was time to close that chapter for good. I walked in the door with Emily, trailing behind, takeout bag in hand, ready to kick off a quiet Friday night. Instead, the door was slightly ajar, not broken, just unlocked. My heart thumped. I nudged it open fully and stepped inside. There in the middle of my living room stood my parents. Behind them, Tara sprawled on the couch shoes, off-scrolling through her phone as if she'd moved in. My mom's arms were crossed, and my dad was flipping through one of my old photo albums like it was a magazine. "Hey," I said, voice calm, but my insides twisting. "What are you doing here?" Emily froze at the threshold, eyes wide. My mom gave that tight-lipped smile, the one that always means we know we're in the right. "We needed to talk," she said, her tone syrupy. "You didn't answer calls, so we came by." "This is trespassing," I replied, stepping forward. "You can't just let yourselves in like this." Dad set down the album, another rehearsed grin plastered on his face. "You owe us an explanation." "He said you broke our trust when you froze the account." "You broke into my home," I shot back. "That's a different kind of trust." Tara sat up, waving her phone. "He's making a big deal out of nothing. We're family. Family doesn't barge into apartments, uninvited." Emily spoke up, her voice firm. My mom shot her a look so cold it could have been winter glass. "This is family business," she hissed, as if that trumped landlord-tenant law. In that moment, I realized how deep their sense of entitlement ran. To them, my apartment was just another piece of property they controlled, my boundaries mere suggestions, my privacy non-existent. I took a breath, letting the weight of it settle in. The kitchen table, the locked bedroom door, they had all been crossed. Each violation piled atop months of manipulation, stolen vacation days, silent financial raids, mocking laughter at family meetings. I wanted to reason with them, but their smug faces told me they weren't here for understanding. They were here to intimidate, to remind me I was still under their thumb until I showed I wasn't. So I said the one thing they would never expect: get out. They paused, stunned, as if that word had severed their tether to my world. My mom's jaw clenched, Dad's face reddened, Tara's eyes widened. Then they backed toward the door, Mom trailing last, swatting at the bag of snacks she'd brought as peace offerings. I closed the door behind them, locked it, and leaned against it. Emily slipped her hand into mine and gave it a reassuring squeeze. I had just defended my home and my self-respect. In the silence that followed, a single thought rang clear. This wasn't just a fight over money or dinner. It was a line drawn in the sand, and I knew exactly who I had to call next. That night, I drove to Aunt Denise's house feeling raw and uncertain, like I was walking into a lion's den, but it turned out to be the safest place I'd found in years. Her living room smelled of lavender and old books, the kind of scent that wraps around you and says, "You belong." She motioned me to the couch and handed me a thick manila folder. "Your mother's been running a con." Denise said, her voice calm but fierce. I blinked, not sure what to expect. Inside, I found photocopies of loan agreements, $10,000 for a new roof in 2012 that matched almost exactly with photos of my parents suntanning on a Caribbean beach. Venmo screenshots labeled roof repairs that coincided with Instagram shots of them clinking Mai Tais. Denise watched me piece it together. She borrows from cousins, she explained. When they ask questions, she blames you or claims it was a misunderstanding. I remembered Mom's tearful pleas. "You're my rock," she'd say, after I quietly covered her bills. Then weeks later, she'd accuse me of never caring when I asked about repayment. As I flipped through, I saw her pattern. She'd send heartfelt messages after I paid. "I don't know what I'd do without you," then circle back and paint herself as the martyr if I ever asked for honesty. Denise leaned forward. Guilt is her favorite weapon. Then came a batch of emails from extended family birthdays, graduations, emergencies, each one edited by Mom, dates changed, names, left out, entire paragraphs rewritten. She was the family archivist and the sole editor, reshaping every story, so that doubters looked like villains. My chest tightened. Half my life I'd believed what I saw in their eyes, that I was the dependable son, the pillar. Now I realized I'd been a linchpin in my own cage. Denise poured us each a glass of wine and said, "Now you know, do what you need to do." Back in my apartment, I sat at my desk, the folder beside me, and finally exhaled. It wasn't just about one weekend or one failed bank withdrawal. It was a lifetime of manipulation. I felt a fierce clarity. I was done cleaning up their messes. That night, I locked the folder away. I wasn't just Andrew the provider or Andrew the forgotten son. I was Andrew, the one who saw behind the curtain and who refused to be manipulated any longer. And in that moment, I tasted the first breath of freedom. The next morning, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in years. Today, I was cutting every last chain my family had wrapped around me. First, I called Clara, the family disputes lawyer Aunt Denise recommended, and told her everything. By afternoon, she'd drawn up paperwork to sever all financial ties, closing the joint account, removing my parents as beneficiaries on my insurance, and revoking any power of attorney I'd granted in those guilt-ridden moments. I logged into my banking app, and with a few taps, shut down that joint card for good. Then I took a screenshot of my account balance, $0 available on the shared line, and posted it once to the extended family WhatsApp group with no caption, no explanation needed. Within minutes, messages flooded in question marks. "Are you okay?" from cousins. "This is insane" from Aunt Marianne. Mom texted me directly. "How could you do this?" "Dad tried bribes. Let's talk." I didn't reply. I didn't block them. I simply let the digital silence speak. That evening, Clara filed a temporary no-contact order against my parents for trespassing and harassment. She explained that I didn't have to live in fear of another uninvited visit or a midnight phone barrage. The paperwork arrived on my doorstep 2 days later, an official reminder that my home, my life, was mine alone now. But the hardest cut was emotional. I spent that weekend erasing them from every corner of my digital world, deleting their email addresses, changing every shared password, and exiting the group chats where their voices had once drowned me in obligation. With each swipe, I felt lighter, and when I finally deleted the family group chat entirely, it was like breathing fresh air after years underwater. I didn't tether myself to bitterness. I told myself the truth. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're fences to remind you where you end and others begin. Studies show clear boundaries reduce anxiety and stress by up to 30%, giving you back mental space you didn't even realize you'd lost. By the end of that week, my phone was quiet for the first time in months. No urgent pings, no guilt-laden pleas, just the steady hum of my own life moving forward. I poured myself a glass of wine, raised it to the empty living room, and toasted, "Here's to the freedom I earned." Because cutting the chains wasn't an act of cruelty, it was an act of self-respect. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say enough, draw the line, and finally choose yourself. Not long after I severed our financial ties and locked down my home, the backlash came in a form I never expected: a formal anonymous complaint to the school board. One Wednesday morning, just before lunch, an email arrived from the Office of Professional Conduct District 14, alleging I was emotionally unstable and that my personal issues were affecting the classroom environment. No specifics, just vague accusations of erratic behavior and concerning tone, even referencing a relationship conflict with an unnamed partner. My stomach sank. They weren't just trying to hurt me financially or invade my home. They were attempting to derail my career. I called Clara, my lawyer, immediately. She didn't flinch. Within hours, she'd subpoenaed the email metadata and worked with IT to trace the IP address back to my sister, Tara's college network. Meanwhile, I prepared my own documentation. Student feedback, colleagues, testimonials, lesson plans, even my attendance records, anything that proved I was the same dedicated teacher I'd always been. Studies show that preparing comprehensive evidence in professional misconduct cases increases the chance of dismissal by over 60%, and I wasn't about to be that statistic. When the school's HR director called me in, I walked into her office with calm confidence. I laid out the forensic report linking the complaint to Tara, handed over my supporting documents, and asked them to investigate properly. By week's end, they dropped the complaint and issued a formal apology acknowledging the false nature of the allegations. My record was cleared, and HR even offered me their Employee of the Month recognition as a gesture of support. Clara wasn't done. She filed a restraining order against my parents for trespassing and harassment, citing the break-in incident and the ongoing intimidation. The court granted it within days, legally barring them from coming within 500 feet of me or my workplace. My landlord installed a security camera at no extra charge, and the police recorded my trespassing report, making it official. Boundary lines were drawn in more than just sand. Throughout the process, Emily stood by me, reminding me that fighting fire with fire was sometimes necessary to protect what mattered. When things quieted down, I realized retaliation wasn't about vengeance. It was about reclaiming safety, dignity, and the right to live without fear. And as I sat at my new desk that afternoon, papers filed, locks changed, legal orders in place, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: unshakable peace. I signed the lease on a bright 2-bedroom, just a few blocks from the park, the week after everything fell apart. As I hauled boxes through the front door for the first time, I kept expecting that familiar knot of dread anxiety primed by one more guilt-laden call or surprise visit. Instead, I was greeted by stillness, my own space untouched by their expectations. Emily and Denise dropped by later with pizza and a bottle of wine, and for the first time, I didn't have to explain or defend. We simply unpacked boxes, laughed over dumb pizza toppings, and stacked books on new shelves. In those early days, I discovered that changing your address can be as healing as therapy. Studies show that moving to a new home often reduces stress levels by up to 20%, giving your mind a clean slate. I felt it in every corner of that apartment, the way sunlight poured in through the south-facing windows, how the hum of distant traffic was no longer a reminder of the chaos they'd created, but just life carrying on. By the end of my first week, I opened my phone and saw the old family WhatsApp group still blinking unread. Without hesitation, I deleted it, vanishing that stream of entitlement and obligation in a single swipe. No drama, no announcements. It simply didn't exist anymore. And when I saw the shock on cousin and aunt messages that flooded in, I realized the real test of family isn't how you react when they call, but how you feel when they don't. Soon new routines anchored me. I walked my 4th grade students to the nearby library every Wednesday, noticing the street lamps I'd never seen before. I brewed coffee Saturday mornings, while Emily cooked breakfast in our cozy kitchen nook. Denise dropped by with her knitting club, once a fortnight, claiming she missed having an audience. We talked about everything but my parents. The old stories felt too toxic to rehearse. At work, colleagues noticed the change. I was more present, less distracted. My students' spelling test scores ticked up, and my principal even asked what had changed. I just smiled and said, I finally feel at home. Here's the thing I've learned. Blood doesn't guarantee belonging. Family is who shows up when life knocks the wind out of you. It's the friends who hold space for your pain, the partner who stands firm when everyone else doubts, and the aunt who hands you evidence of your own worth. In that new apartment, surrounded by people who chose me, I found a richer definition of home. So if you ever feel like you're the one paying the price to be seen, remember this. Sometimes peace isn't built on forgiveness, it's built on choosing who you allow through your door. And your real family. They'll stand on the other side of that welcome mat, ready to stay. That evening, as the city lights danced against my window, I realized something profound. Peace doesn't arrive with a grand reunion or a tidy apology. It blossoms the moment you say, "I'm done." Psychologists note that setting firm boundaries can reduce anxiety and restore a sense of self-worth, and I felt it as a quiet calm settling over me. I wasn't defined by the come-and-go loyalty of people who once saw me only as a resource. I was defined by my own choice to protect my heart and my home. In that neat sunlit apartment where laughter echoed from Emily's cooking in the kitchen and Denise's knitted throws warmed the sofa, I found something more precious than any family album could offer: the freedom to be exactly who I am, unafraid and unborrowed. If you've ever carried the weight of expectation so heavy it dimmed your own light, know this: sometimes the bravest thing isn't to hold on, but to let go. When you stop negotiating your worth, you make room for a life that honors your dreams, your health, and your peace. Subscribe if you believe in chosen family, in standing firm, and in telling your own story, because the next chapter starts when you decide, once and for all, that you're the one who matters most.